There is a town in Nova Scotia that looks like it was lifted straight from northern Germany. There is a village in Ontario, frozen in 1832, where limestone buildings have never been touched. And there is a coastline in Newfoundland, so Norse in its character that Vikings built their first settlement there 1,000 years ago. Today, we are covering 7 secret places in Canada that look exactly like Europe. Number 7. Banff and Lake Louise Backcountry, Alberta. Everyone knows Banff. The town, the gondola, the lineup of tour buses on the Icefields Parkway. What almost nobody knows are the quieter viewpoints just beyond the crowds, places that look less like the Canadian Rockies and more like the Swiss Alps on a quiet morning. The Larch Valley Trail above Moraine Lake is the most obvious example. In late September, when the larch trees turn gold, the scene below the 10 Peaks is almost identical to certain valleys in the Bernese Oberland. The less visited viewpoints around Lake Louise, particularly the Plain of Six Glaciers Trail and the Beehive lookouts above Lake Agnes, offer perspectives the parking lot crowd never reaches. The tea house at Lake Agnes has been serving hikers since 1905. There is no road access. Supplies are packed in by horse. You sit at a wooden table with a view that has not changed in a century. There is nothing else in Canada quite like it. Number 6. Old Quebec City, Quebec. Old Quebec is the most European place in North America. Not European influenced, European in the way that matters. The city was built by Europeans who had no intention of building anything else. Most visitors see the Chateau Frontenac and call it done. The real Old Quebec is in the smaller streets that branch off the tourist corridors. Rue du Trésor is barely wide enough for 2 people to pass. The back streets of the lower town around Place Royale have stone buildings that date to the late 1600s. The fortification walls, original military infrastructure, still completely encircling the old city, are best walked at dusk, when the skyline below looks like it has not changed in 100 years. People visit Paris and say it feels like Old Quebec. They have the direction of the comparison exactly backwards. This place was here first. St. John's is the oldest city in North America, and it looks the part, just not in the way most people expect. Jelly Bean Row is the famous image, the steep residential streets of the downtown core lined with wooden row houses, painted in colors so saturated they look digitally altered. Violet, magenta, lime green, deep red. The houses are pressed together on narrow lots on streets that follow the contours of the Harbor Hill, with no concession to the grid logic that defines most North American cities. The result is a neighborhood that looks like it was lifted from the west coast of Ireland and set down on a Newfoundland hillside, which is not far from the truth given where the families who built these houses came from. Signal Hill sits above the city at the entrance to the Harbor Narrows. From the summit you look across the North Atlantic with nothing between you and Europe but open water. Cabot Tower stands at the top, the spot where Marconi received the first transatlantic wireless signal in 1901. On a clear day, visibility can reach 60 kilometers across the open ocean. On a foggy day, and that is most days, the horn sounds, the city below disappears, and you are standing alone above the clouds with the Atlantic breathing below you. Number 4. Grote Mourne, Newfoundland. Grote Mourne is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which most Canadians know. What most Canadians do not know is exactly why. The fjords of Western Brook Pond are the reason. It is a freshwater lake 16 kilometers long, completely landlocked, surrounded by vertical cliffs rising over 600 meters from the water. The scale is Norwegian. Boat tours run in summer, and sitting at the base of those cliffs, looking up at waterfalls dropping hundreds of meters into the still water, the reference point that comes to mind is not Canada at all. It is somewhere in Norway that tourists spend thousands of dollars to reach. Western Brook Pond is a 3-kilometer walk from the parking lot on the main highway. That is the entire barrier between you and one of the most spectacular landscapes on the continent. The tablelands add a second layer. These flat-topped ochre mountains are composed of rock from the Earth's mantle, forced to the surface 480 million years ago. Almost nothing grows on them. Number 3, Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. Lunenburg is the most visually European town in Canada, and it is not particularly close. Founded in 1753 by German, Swiss, and French Protestant settlers, the town was built on a steep hillside above a working harbor, according to building traditions brought directly from Northern Europe. UNESCO designated it a World Heritage Site in 1995. The citation notes that Lunenburg represents the best surviving example of a British colonial settlement in North America. What the citation does not convey is the disorientation of standing on the upper streets and looking down over compressed colored rooftops to the harbor below. That geometry, the steep grades, the narrow blocks, the facades stepping down toward the water, belongs to a visual language that North America mostly never developed. Marrickville is the village that time forgot, and in this case that is not a cliché. It is a precise description. The village sits on the Rideau River, about an hour south of Ottawa, at a point where the Rideau Canal locks have operated continuously since 1832. The main street is a single block of limestone commercial buildings from the 1820s and the 1830s that have never been torn down, never been clad in aluminum siding, and never been widened to accommodate the traffic that never came because the railway bypassed Marrickville in the 1850s and froze the town in place. That bypass is the reason Marrickville looks the way it does. Every other town on the Rideau corridor that got the railway grew, redeveloped, and lost its original fabric. Marrickville did not grow, it simply stayed. The blockhouse built by the British military in 1832 is the largest surviving blockhouse in Canada. It sits at the edge of the locks where original stonework lines the canal walls, and boats pass through in summer the same way they have passed through for nearly 2 centuries. Number 1, L'Anse aux Meadows and the Northern Peninsula coastal villages, Newfoundland. We are ending here because nothing else in Canada makes the connection to Europe as literally as this. L'Anse aux Meadows is where Norse explorers built a settlement around the year 1000 AD, 800 years before any other European presence in North America. The sod structures have been reconstructed on the original foundations and sit in a treeless headland landscape at the northern tip of Newfoundland that looks exactly like the Icelandic and Norwegian coastlines the Vikings left behind. Standing there, you are not looking at a recreation of Europe. You are looking at the place where Europe first touched this continent and left a mark that lasted 1,000 years. But the villages along the northern peninsula are the detail that makes the whole region feel like another world. Communities like St. Anthony, Conchet, and Croak sit in small protected harbors on a coastline of fjords and headlands that the fishing families who settled them never stopped calling home, regardless of how isolated they became. The houses are painted bright colors against the gray rock and gray sky, for the same reason Scandinavian coastal villages are painted bright colors. Because color is how you hold on to something warm when everything around you is cold. Subscribe. Next week, we found something even stranger.